So the second concept we're going to look at when analyzing the financial statement of a firm is the revenue that gets earned. Now, in contrast to cost, revenue is simply the business's income or earnings over a period of time. Now, for most of our businesses, the income or the earnings are actually going to come from the products that get sold. So another really easy way to think about revenue is this calculation. To determine revenue, look at the quantity of products sold times the selling price. Now, this very simple equation will actually give us our revenue over a certain time period. Now, when it comes to revenue, it's obviously going to be very different from business to business, and this will be based on also, a range of different factors. The selling price will be with the actual pricing strategy in mind of the company. In terms of pricing strategy, we might want to position our product as a luxury product. As a result, it might have a really high position, really high price. We might want to, position our product as maybe a bit of a cheaper alternative. And as a result, we'll probably see different prices for different businesses, and that's going to have an impact on the amount of quantity that's sold. If we're talking about a luxury business, we're probably going to have to sell less to actually create a higher amount of revenue. Whereas if we're looking at a company that's actually positioning themselves as a cheaper alternative, then the quantity they're going to have to actually sell is going to be significantly higher to earn a higher revenue. Now, the other thing about revenue is that decisions about price should be made with the cost of the product in mind. So when we talk about actually determining, that's not how you spell that, determining the price of our product, we want to keep a couple of things in mind. What does our product cost? And then what price, or in other words, what markup does the business need to place in order to cover costs? So even though revenue and cost are these different concepts, they have an overlap in the mind of the business because they can't be treated independently. These things are interdependent of each other. The business needs to ensure, number one, for most profit-making businesses, their number one objective is to ensure that they're actually covering all of their costs. Now, the way that we figure out whether or not this actually occurs is by figuring out the profit of the company. The profit, very simply, is just actually the revenue minus costs of a company. If that figure is positive, great. We're earning more than our business is costing us, and we're going to be able to stay in business. If that figure is a negative, well, then we're in a little bit of trouble and potentially need to look at either, foreclosing the business or making some changes to our pricing strategies, making some changes to our costs to determine, to ensure that the company is profitable from here on in. Done this again. Should have learned my lesson. Okay, so what we'll do now is look at a quick worked example of how we will actually calculate revenue in a business. We'll look at a company that is a food stall selling two different types of products. So, food stall, this company will sell sandwiches, sort of nondescript, let's say ham and cheese sandwiches at an average price, right? Or determined at a price, sandwiches at $2.50 per sandwich. Obviously, quite a low price point for this food store. And let's say, for assumption's sake, that there have been 4,500 sandwiches sold. And we'll say this is in the usual sort of month of trading for this company. Now, they also provide coffee, and the coffee gets sold at around about $1.50 per cup, quite an incredible discount. And let's say over this monthly period, they've sold 9,450 cups of coffee. So the question is now, okay, how do we actually determine our revenue, and how much revenue did the firm receive in its last month of trading? Okay, so let's figure out for each sandwiches here first. We'll look at calculating our revenues. What we want to do is times, remember our equation for determining revenue is the cost of, quantity times the price of the product. That's revenue. So in this instance, sandwiches quantity is 4,500 and the price was $2.50. $2.50. And so that equals, I'm going to run out of room here, $11,250. Now the coffee sold 9,450 cups of coffee at $1.50 each. That means that we've earned $14,175 from coffee. Now, to determine the total revenue for the month, what I'm going to do is just add those two figures together. So 11,250 plus 14,175. Oh, getting close there. Total revenue for this month was $25,425. Okay, so that's pretty good figure there for our company. Obviously, we're not aware of the costs of this food stall, so we can't actually make a decision on whether or not this will be profitable. But one thing that I am interested in is what would happen if we change the price of these products. Let's say, for example, that the food store thinks they're doing a really good job of selling sandwiches. They feel like their sandwiches, have a really strong competitive advantage over some of the other food stalls in the area. So they'd like to increase the price of sandwiches, increase price of sandwiches to $3. $3 per sandwich. Now, we also would like to increase the price of coffee. Inflation is hitting this company just like it is all other businesses. So looking to increase the price of coffee to $1.75 per cup. Now, what I'd be interested to know is how this would impact the quantity sold of these products, and then how it would impact the overall revenue of the product as well. Now, let's say that sandwiches for people, there's been this price increase of 50 cents, and we're going to say that that's, meant that about roughly 10% of the customers, or 10% fall in 10% of the quantity of sandwiches. So now instead of selling 4,500 sandwiches, they've sold 4,050 sandwiches. And in terms of the coffee, well, our coffee has actually decreased. The quantity sold of our coffee has decreased as well. And we've only sold 8,000 coffees over the monthly period. Now, what's interesting is, okay, will this actually lead to an increase or a decrease in the amount of revenue earned by the company? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. So we do price times quantity for sandwiches. So we've sold now 4,050 sandwiches times $3. That gives us a monthly revenue of $12,150. So we're actually seeing an increase in the revenue of sandwiches, largely thanks to that price increase. Even though the quantity has decreased, the price has meant that revenue has gone up. Let's look now at the actual change to coffee. So coffee, we've seen a decrease in quantity to 8,000, but that increase in price of $1.75 gives us a new revenue of $14,000, which is a decrease on the previous month. So what is our total new revenue? We'll take the 12,000 figure and add 14,000, which means that overall total revenue has come to $26,150. So there has been an increase overall in the amount of revenue per month by the food stall by about $725 per week. So it goes to show that the increase in price in this instance was actually a really good option, even though it led to a decrease in the quantity of goods sold. That was offset by the increase in price. So it just gives us an example of how we can actually determine revenues and what revenues are